Good morning. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. We have a fantastic turnout. We are just allowing a minute for everybody to join and ensure everyone can hear. My name is Kristen Croucher and I am moderating today's session. And with me, I will do some introduction shortly, but we have David and Iyasu. And I'm just going to give one more minute to make sure we have everybody successfully on the line. So just bear with me. All right. Welcome, everyone. So welcome to today's session, which is a webinar on the experience of decentralized clinical trials in Africa. Before we begin, I'd like to share with you a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded. If you're not comfortable with that, you're welcome to disconnect. However, the recording will be shared with all of you and everyone who registered after the session. Please use the chat function if you have any issues, but also to introduce yourself so that we know who's on the line with us. You will see that there's a separate Q&A box. Please use that function to post any questions that you have at any time during the session, and I will call those out during the open Q&A. Alternatively, if you do want to raise your question in person, please raise your hand using the hand raise function and we will unmute your line. We have muted and turned off all videos because we have a good number of participants in today's session. All right, so today our panelists will be sharing on the results of a survey conducted on the experiences from conduct of decentralized clinical trials across Africa. The concept of the survey was generated about 2 years ago by a group of product development partners collaborating through the Global Health Clinical Consortium, also known as the GHCC. The GHCC is convened by the Gates Foundation to bring together product development partners, which are research organizations that focus on diseases that affect vulnerable populations in low and middle income countries, to help to mitigate obstacles and improve practice of clinical trials through sharing of knowledge and collaboration. The Center for Innovative Drug Development and Therapeutic Trials for Africa, also known as CDT-Africa, is a World Bank-supported African Center of Excellence for Higher Education and Research at the College of Health Sciences in Ethiopia. CDT-Africa has worked alongside the GHCC partners on this survey, as well as a number of other successful initiatives. The idea for the survey was generated as there was a sense that sponsors and implementers are hesitant to conduct DCT in Africa based on perceptions. And this group of collaborators wanted to make sure that we understood what the actual experience is in DCT across the African continent and unearth the success stories and challenges with their implementation so that we could help to inform the planning and execution of DCTs in Africa in future, making sure that Africa is not left out of DCT advancements. Today, we welcome Prof. Iyasu Makinen and Dr. David Ejigu to share the findings of the survey. Iyasu is Professor of Pharmacology at Addis Ababa University, Deputy Head of the CDT-Africa, and a Fellow at the Ethiopian Academy of Sciences. He's recipient of a number of prestigious awards and founder of the Leishmaniasis Eastern African platform called LEAP. He has experience as a clinical research clinician and a bioethicist and serves on various editorial and ethics review boards. Iyasu has published close to 250 articles in peer-reviewed journals, and we're honored to have him join us today. David is an associate professor at St. Paul's Hospital Millennium Medical College and a clinical operations program lead for CDT-Africa. He also serves on the Ethiopian FDA's National Advisory Committee for Clinical Trials. Over his career, he has gained extensive experience in clinical research, working at the Serum Statin Institute in Denmark, the European Vaccine Initiative in Germany, and others. David was the leader of the Vaccine Development Consortium, Amanet in Tanzania, and prior to that worked as a clinical monitor at WHO TDR after successfully completing a TDR fellowship at GSK Bio. David has taken a lead role in the development and execution and analysis of the survey on DCTs in Africa, and we're very grateful for his leadership and the support of CDT-Africa. With no further ado, I now hand over to Iyasu, who will share with us about CDT-Africa's clinical trials community of practice. Professor, over to you.
Thanks, Christine, for the modest introduction. I'm going to present to you about clinical trial community of practice in Africa. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, when we talk about community of practice, it refers to a group of people who share common interests in order to promote their own ideas. Community of practice in clinical trial, it refers to individuals, institutions, or stakeholders of clinical trial who share common interests in clinical trials in order to enhance knowledge, share best practices, improve methodologies within clinical trials. Next slide. Community practice is a shared domain among clinical trial stakeholders, including investigators, regulatory professionals, and others. The shared domain focuses on improving clinical trial process as well as outcomes. One of the key aspects of clinical practice is knowledge sharing in order to exchange ideas, experiences, as well as challenges faced while clinical trials were being conducted. It also helps foster a culture of continuous learning. Next slide. Community practice also deals with collaboration in order to work together to address issues in clinical trials through leveraging expertise. It also deals with innovation in trial design, innovation in patient recruitment, data analysis, regulatory issues by pooling resources as well as knowledge. Professional development is also contributed by community practice in order to provide opportunities to enhance skills of members and stay updated on current trends in clinical trial. Community of practice works with networking to serve as a platform for building professional connections, resulting in career opportunities as well as collaborations. In an attempt to establish community of practice, CDT-Africa, together with its partners, has offered 2 cohorts of clinical trial operation courses involving community of practice for alumni, as well as non-alumni participants. So we encourage you all to participate in the course and community of practice. Clinical trial community works on feasibility assessment in the continent by providing information about clinical trial stakeholders. Community of practice is a tool to exchange information about clinical trial we are involved in. Of course, collaboration and networking are the keys to promote and improve conduct of clinical trial in Africa through experience sharing. The major challenge which we faced during the DCT survey was getting adequate response due to absence of clinical practice in clinical trial within the continent. Had we joined clinical practice, we wouldn't have encountered such problems, of course. So learning from our mistake, the take-home message is that we should work hard to realize clinical practice. We believe together we can make a change. Next slide, please. So we'd like to thank all institutions involved in the DCT survey, including those participants who have been involved in the survey process. I would like to thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Iyasu. Really appreciate you providing that context about clinical communities of practice. Before we hand over to David to share the actual survey and the results, are there any questions for Iyasu? I don't see any in the Q&A and I don't see any in the chat. And I don't see any hands raised. So on that, thank you, Prof. Iyasu. And David, I welcome you to now share on the survey itself, experiences, advantages, challenges, and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. I hope I'm audible. So what I'm going to do in this part of the webinar is just to give you some key findings from our survey in Decentralized, including the advantage and the challenge experienced by the participants of the survey, and also the recommendations forwarded by these participants in concerning, which DCT elements are appropriate for implementation in the continent, as well as which aspects need to be improved so that we'll have a smooth implementation of DCT in general. You might be aware that decentralized clinical trials are clinical trials which have remote conduct of trial-related activities and outside of the research centers. And to do that, DCTs leverage digital health technologies, and DCTs are also patient-centered, which means the clinical trials are coming to the doorsteps of the participants instead of the patients or participants going to the research centers. Actually, DCTs started probably 14, 15 years ago, but their use gained momentum only after the COVID pandemic. So the objective of our survey was to assess what DCT experience looked like in the continent, including the challenge and benefits experienced during implementing DCT in the continent, and also collecting recommendations concerning which DCT aspects are appropriate for implementation in the continent, as well as what needs to be improved or changed so that there is smooth implementation of DCTs. We gathered response from 90 participants based in 31 different countries, based in the African continent itself, also in Europe, Asia, as well as the US. And out of these 90 participants, 40 of them actually do have experience implementing DCTs within the continent and also within the last 5 years. The experience of these 40 participants with experience on DCT actually do have experience in 25 different African countries. And looking at the organizations from which these 40 participants came, the most frequent organization are clinical trial sites and centers, and that's also followed by trial sponsoring organizations. But then again, you have got other organizations, including CROs, regulatory agency, ethics committees, and others. Again, looking at the roles of these participants, the most common, the most frequent role is investigator, doctors, and also the second most common frequent are study coordinators, and the third most frequent was project manager. We have got also other roles, including pharmacists, IRB reviewers, regulatory reviewers, quality managers, nurses, data managers, and so on. As I mentioned earlier, the 40 participants with experience in DCT have experience in 25 different African countries. And they were asked to mention specifically in which country their DCT experience, they have DCT experience in which country. And the most frequently mentioned country was Kenya. And in the second place were South Africa and Tanzania. And on the third spot was Cote d'Ivoire. But then again, you have got other 21 other different countries where these respondents have experience implementing DCT. Looking at the setting where DCTs have been implemented, most of the participants indicated having experience both in rural and urban settings, and followed by experience in urban settings, and the least was experience in rural settings. Also, the participants were asked to indicate the phase of the trial they implemented in a DCT mode. And the most frequently cited phase of a trial was phase 2, and that was followed by phase 3 and phase 4 and phase 1 as well. We did an exploratory statistical analysis, and based on this preliminary analysis, what we noted that logistic challenges were more commonly mentioned by participants with experience only in rural settings compared to those with experience in urban or both mixed settings. Also, technology challenges were more commonly mentioned by survey participants with experience in both urban and rural settings than participants with experience in each settings alone. And moreover, more usage of e-source was reported by participants with experience in rural settings than the ones in urban settings or mixed settings. As I said, this is a very preliminary statistical analysis and it's not confirmatory. The participants were asked to tell us which DCT elements they have implemented in their clinical trials, and the most frequently mentioned DCT element was direct data entry, and that was followed by study visits conducted in locations other than the research centers, and the third most frequent one was remote study visits. But then again, we have got other visits with a less frequency, including electronic source data, wearable devices, or digital tools used to capture data, remote e-consent, e-diaries, EPRO, and also investigational medicinal products shipped directly to participants or local facility. We then asked the participants what the challenges were in terms of implementing DCT in the continent. And the most frequently mentioned challenge was technology challenge. And that was followed by infrastructure challenge. And the third one was digital literacy. We have got also other challenges mentioned, including regulatory compliance, reduced oversight, increased cost, IMP delivery issues, safety and rights of participants, scientific validity of the trial, and other types of challenge. We then dissected what each group of challenge look like, and the specific challenge mentioned under technology includes internet and mobile networks, issues with experience concerning the devices and also the technologies used in the DCT setup, and also other issues with device and technology, including availability, compatibility, and versions of the devices, and the device being used for multiple purposes other than the clinical trial. Specific challenge under infrastructure includes issues with availability of electricity that for recharging the devices, lack of roads, skepticism about digital health technologies and telemedicine, and also lack of time sensitivity, negatively affecting virtual interactions and visits. As you might be aware, for virtual interactions, there should be a fixed date and time fixed by the participants and research staff. And if the participants are not showing up in time or on time, then the virtual interaction is going to be negatively affected. Specific challenges under digital literacy includes lack of familiarity with the digital technologies, patients not knowing how to use advanced applications, and even research staff re-entering data several times because the system could not save because of technical issues. And another specific challenge pertains to training not being optimal for literate people and unnecessarily complex platforms. And the last one, senior people needing assistance. We have got also specific challenge categorized under miscellaneous. And this includes challenge concerning maintaining the integrity of the investigational medicinal products, also errors in administration of investigational medicinal products, or recording their administration, misconceptions about clinical trials in general and devices used in DCT particularly, and also lack of regulatory framework and problems with managing sensitive data. The participants were then asked to suggest solutions to come around this challenge that they have mentioned. And one of the suggestions under to solve technology challenge include offline applications, that is to offset the internet challenge, providing ample time for setting up the remote systems, providing devices and assistance to patients, particularly by the sponsors, and also to improve the internet service as a whole. And several suggestions were made under this improvement in internet service, including making sure availability of multiple internet providers in the DCT side, broadening service to cover trial site, investment on internet by the government, satellite internet connectivity, signal boosters, pilot testing connectivity before embarking on DCT endeavors, and also optimizing cost of the internet. Other suggestions concerning technology challenge include training both the participants, regulatory authorities, ensuring data security, and also involving stakeholders from the outside. Suggestions to overcome infrastructure challenge include putting aside budget to help infrastructure issues and also involving the government in the DCT endeavor. Another set of suggestions to solve digital literacy challenge includes providing training and support, reducing tax by government on relevant devices that are with the potential to be used in DCTs, and also making the platforms, the DCT platforms, user-friendly. Suggestions under miscellaneous category include using cooler boxes with calibrated min-max digital thermometers. This pertains to resolving the IMP challenge, and also using culturally appropriate consent and questionnaires, and also involving the regulatory authorities from the beginning. The participants were also asked, what were the advantages of implementing DCTs in the continent, and the most frequently cited advantage was improved access to trials by patients or participants. And the second most frequent one was improved speed of data availability. And the third one was decreased administrative or logistical burden. We have also other types of advantage mentioned by the participants, including improved patient retention, decreased cost, improved data quality, faster recruitment, and improved patient experience at a lesser frequency. The participants were then asked to indicate which DCT element actually resulted in the advantage that they mentioned. And based on their response, the DCT elements more frequently linked with improved access to trials by patient includes DCT elements such as remote visits, direct data entry, visits in different locations other than the research centers, And DCT elements which resulted in improved speed of data availability includes direct data entry, eSource, EDRs, and EPRO. And DCT elements such as direct data entry, remote visits, and visits in different locations, they resulted in a reduced administrative burden. And DCT elements which led to improved patient retention includes visits in different locations, remote visits, and EDRs and EPRO. Also, DCT elements which led to decreased cost includes direct data entry, remote visits, and eSource. Improved data quality was also linked with most frequently with DCT elements such as direct data entry, eSource, EDRs, and EPRO. Faster recruitment was linked with visits in different locations, remote visits, eSource. And finally, improved patient experience was more frequently associated with DCT elements such as remote visits, EDRs, EPRO, and direct IMP shipment to patients or local facilities. The participants were asked to indicate which DCT element is appropriate for implementation in the continent, and that's based on their experience and opinion. And for this question, the most frequently recommended DCT element is direct data entry at a recommendation rate of 92%. And the second most commonly recommended DCT elements are electronic source data and remote study visits at a recommendation rate of 82%. And on the third spot are wearable devices and study visits conducted in a location other than the research centers. And both of them at a recommendation rate of 79%. We have got also approval rate of EDRs and EPRO at 74% and remote e-consenting at 56%. And the least approved DCT element is IMP shipment directly to patients or local facilities. We then asked the participants what are their justifications for not recommending a specific DCT element which they did not approve in the previous question. And some of the responses and justifications are indicated here. So here I would like to emphasize that, of course, the justifications which are more frequent, they are indicated in the first and second bullet. But the third and fourth bullet, their frequency is not comparable to the first two. So this is common for thematic analysis. The one with more responses, they tend to come to be presented in the first. So sometimes, the justification could be a response probably from a single person. So the justifications for not recommending direct IMP shipment to patients include the system in LMICs not being optimal, including issues with identifiability of addresses, particularly in rural villages, literacy issues, and also infrastructural problems. And another justification for not recommending direct IMP shipment includes issues with IMP management, including issues with preserving the IMP itself, issues with accountability, issues with proper use, or and issues such as like that. And the third justification for not using direct IMP shipment is safety concerns. The issue here is that if the safety concern of the IMP is very much high, probably it's not safe to ship it directly to the patients. And the last one is a regulatory challenge. So concerning the justifications for not recommending IMP shipment, I would like to close it by reading a quote from a particular respondent, which said, quote, "This consideration, that is IMP shipment, should be on case-by-case basis. Trials with complex IMP administration modalities will require to be administered at the clinical research centers to ensure proper delivery and adherence. When you look at the justifications of the participants for not recommending remote e-content, includes technical problems and logistics, including network outage and lot of study gadgets such as tablets. Another justification includes lack of experience by both the regulatory authorities and ethics committee members. And the third justification is concerning digital literacy issues. Again, justifications for not recommending EDRs and EPRO include the possibility that participants' reported data may not be accurate, and also issues with digital literacy, and also, again, the possibility of having a room for data manipulation when EDRs and EPROs are used as DCT elements. Justifications for not recommending wearable devices include issues with digital literacy and also issues with internet connectivity. The participants also indicated their justifications for not recommending other DCT elements, which we haven't seen so far in terms of the justification for not approving them. Justifications include diminished oversight by sponsors or investigators on the clinical trial, frequent errors or lack of opportunity to make corrections. This particularly pertains to direct data entry. Finally, the participants were asked what their recommendations are in terms of what aspects needs to be improved or changed so that we'll have smooth implementation of decentralized clinical trials in the continent. And their responses were grouped together in a thematic analysis. And the most frequent response is grouped under training and preparation, where the participants detailed that there is a need for adequate training, site preparation, and stakeholder engagement. And the second one pertains to technology and devices, where they indicated that there should be use of appropriate technology, such as tablets and offline devices. And the third one pertains to protocol design, where they indicated the importance of robust protocol design, avoiding loopholes and making scientific objectives clear. The fourth one pertains to digital literacy, where they indicated that there is a need for improving digital literacy among both the staff and also the research communities. And the last one is concerning capacity building for both staff and broader research community. So as I tried to indicate at the beginning, this is only a preliminary and exploratory study, and it could be considered as the first step towards understanding the DCT situation in the continent, and definitely we need additional initiatives and endeavors. And possible next steps could include probably collection of more data from more participants in this survey, which I just presented the preliminary data of. That's one possibility, and of course, dissemination, making available, what we learned from our endeavors, so that the research community, the continent, or in other places with interest to do clinical trial in the continent, so that they will be aware of the situation. Or another possibility could be additional studies, probably with different and robust designs to help us understand the situation, and also how to approach the DCT aspect in the continent. And the last one is possibly developing guidelines, white papers specific to the continent. Probably you're aware that the other regions are well ahead of us in terms of this aspect. They have got now a number of guidelines developed by FDA EMA and other initiatives. And that reflects, the situation for that part of the world. But then again, we may need to have, guidelines and white papers what reflect, our real situations on the ground in the continent. So probably I will stop here, and I would like to inform you that towards the end of the webinar, we have got some polls to to guide us, which aspect at the next step is appropriate, and also probably Professor Yap also will be interested to see who is interested to join the committee of practice, so that we can keep your email addresses and then contact you at the later stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. We have a number of questions that are coming in for you, so I will start to provide those for you. David, you might want to stay on camera because I think you will be addressing most of these questions. Just for everyone's awareness, as David mentioned, we will keep the last 5 minutes just for the poll to be able to garner your feedback and suggestions for future research that might be needed in this space, as well as information on who wants to join the community of practice. Before we do that, David and Iyasu, there is a question as to whether you're happy to share the slides as well as the recording. I know we are sharing the recording. So will we be sharing the slides after the session?
Yeah, I think we should be fine with sharing the slides, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, then I am going to put the first question to you. The first question is from Salemani Tasembedo. The question is about whether DCT is in DCT, who is conducting the study remotely? Is it the PI, the clinicians, M&E, or all? So David, are you able to answer that question?
Yeah, so
clarification.
Yeah, I say just if you have got other sponsors or investigator sponsors leading the being responsible for the trial. So it's basically the question is, who is the sponsor? If it's the pharmaceutical industry or PDPs, then they could be the ones sponsoring the trial, or it could be also an investigator led initiative where the investigators could be responsible. But in that regard, we're not going to have any significant difference between the traditional trials and DCTs.
Thank you. Soleimani, if we haven't answered your question, if it was a little bit, I was a bit unclear on exactly what you're asking. So if we haven't answered your question, do raise your hand and you'd be welcome to voice your question over live. The next question comes from Hunley Bester. She'd like to know the type of remote visits that we're mentioning. Does it include home visits or were these virtual visits?
Yeah, so basically using telephone calls and using telemedicine for interacting. So basically these are the major ones that we encountered in the responses.
Right, thank you. Then you mentioned the need to use culturally sensitive informed consents, possibly on slide 34 of the presentation. Might you be able to elaborate which aspects of the informed consent form could this address? Or could address this? Which aspects of the informed consent form could be made more culturally sensitive?
Yeah, so as you might be expecting, the continent could have, some cultural issues to be careful about before, embarking with DCT. So what's unique about DCT in this concept is that many sites could be involved. And if we don't, sort of, tone down the content of the consent, specifically for the sites within the continent, they may not be appropriate. It starts from the language itself. It starts from the way we are addressing the people in the consent. So also, if you are virtually interacting with them, the greetings and everything, basically every aspect is going to need some sort of revisit before we implement this remote consenting with the participants in Africa.
Great. And just as a reminder to all the questions coming in, obviously David led the conduct of the survey and the consortium of partners from the GHCC developed the questions. However, answers given and also the data of the survey is not advice or instruction on how to do this. This is sharing the results of the surveys for discussion and for further collaboration. So do keep that in mind as you pose your questions to David and Iyasu. All right, how would remote e-consent be operational in typical African rural communities? That comes from Sheikh Omar Sila.
Yeah, probably, Kristen, you can help me here. So you are familiar with remote consenting. So yeah, so should
Yes.
if I'm allowed, can I? Yeah.
You're welcome to. You are as much an expert as everyone on this call in this area, and we're all here to learn. So please go ahead, David. Otherwise, I'm happy to. I see you've gone on mute. I'm happy to go ahead. So how remote e-consent can be done is a number of ways. So what I've seen, and again, this is just my own personal experience, is for a lot of the clinical research coordinators or staff from the site taking an actual iPad out into the community and either going to the home or to a central location such as a hall and conducting a consent a conversation with an electronic tablet, and then that consent is really facilitated with that electronic document or over a video call. That's my experience of how it has been done in more remote settings, but that was not African rural setting in my personal experience. I would welcome anybody else being able to contribute to that question as well. And again, the survey results are based on the results of what individuals who answered the survey provided as their responses. It's not the GHCC or CDT-Africa's expert opinion. Okay, then moving on to the next question. How are digital technologies and AI being used in DCTs, and to what extent is capacity and capability strengthening of government institutions in digital and AI built into study design? Now, that might be a bit of a difficult one because I don't think we really covered that in the survey questions. So that might not be one that we can answer here, but David, over to you in case you're able to provide an answer.
Yeah, we don't have any answer regarding that, and particularly the AI, we never accessed, particularly about AI. Of course, I mean, the questions were about, which technologies used. We have asked, wearable device and digital technologies. Yeah, so I totally agree with you, Christine. It's probably an area which needs further, exploration in the future. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. And I think there is a lot of work, different organizations are doing work on AI to support, different aspects of work in this field, but that was not the focus of the survey. The next question comes from Mosef Nondi. Was there a research site implementing DCT in Africa? I think the question is about, was there one particular site, or is the survey garnering feedback from multiple sites? David, it might be useful to just revisit who the survey respondents were in terms of just a high-level summary of the type of organizations who responded to the survey.
Yeah, so in terms of the types of organizations, as I indicated in the slide, research centers are the ones more commonly responding, and outside of most probably outside of the continent, we have got also sponsors, as second most frequent organizations, responding to the question. So probably this slide tells you the type of organizations, involved in the centers of this information that we just conveyed to you.
Perfect. And I think, Shifaru, that actually answers your question as well about who was included in this survey. So yes, CROs were included in the survey. Well, everyone was welcome to. Some of the survey respondents were from CROs. There was a very broad outreach to as many organizations as possible to get as broad a feedback as we could. Then I'm just going to pick up one of the questions that harks back to the remote consenting point. Have we been able to do verbal consenting as part of hard to reach? And then Alex says that he can explain more. Rahel, are you able to unmute Alex Mutazindwa so that he can just explain his question better?
So who is that? Let me try and unmute him. Alex.
Alex Mutazindwa. And then while you're looking for Alex, let me just find another question. So we'll come back to Alex once you've been able to unmute him. A question from Yo Nsiri Asafakoa, and I apologize if I've mispronounced your name. Is most of the technology having instructions on how to use it in local language or dialect? Or is the technology primarily in English? That's a very good question. And again, David, I don't know whether that came up in the survey responses or where we're aware of that based on what we collected in the survey.
I'm not able to say anything about concerning that because, yeah, what we covered is very much specific and yeah, not broad. So, yeah, all those are very much interesting questions to look into in the future. Concerning Alex, it seems that, or probably I can form it. Somebody was saying something.
I think let's move on from Alex's question. If you're able to elaborate in your question in the chat, then please do. But otherwise, we will need to.
Yeah, I've promoted him to a panelist. Probably that way he can speak. But I can see that Adama has got his speaker icon, which means he can speak. Is there any question from Adama?
No, let's move on. All right, so there is another question about digital literacy. So this question comes from Gurdeep Buttar. How do you improve digital literacy? What are some ideas?
Hello.
Yeah, that's Alex.
Oh, Alex, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Christine, and everyone who is actually presenting here. When it comes to the verbal consenting, we have done both the verbal and we've done this in hard-to-reach areas and also in situations where we have participants who are hard to reach and really far from our communities, but we want them to also be involved in the studies. So what we've really done is mainly, like Christine said, is made sure that we keep a record of the audio of this participant, also confirming that they would want to take part in the study. And we clearly explain. So what we do is we clearly explain the whole consent form. We give the information in detail, and we also allow them to ask questions. And all this is recorded in our verbal consenting. So those consents are actually kept in an audio format. However, we also create a paper trail for the filing on the trial master file, but we also have the audio, which is kept and it's put under the identifiers of the specific participant who actually accepted to take part in the study. And in case there's a decline, of course, we do not keep any of that information. So we make sure we don't have the information of declines, as we don't have the consent to have any of their data or their trial information kept on the study. I hope that could explain it all.
Great, thank you, Alex. And I think just listening to some of the questions that have been coming and some of the really interesting feedback on different perspectives of how that's done, I think to your point, David, about what are the needs for future, I think there is a need to continue discussions and experience and knowledge sharing in this space, because I'm sure people have follow-on questions they'd love to ask Alex based on how they've done that, how the ethics approval process worked for that, how you store those in a secure way, but we won't have time to get into that today. We have only a few minutes left for questions, and I see we still have 3 questions in the chat. I think we're going to have to answer them, and actually there are more questions still coming in. So the questions that we can't get to live today, we will make a note of and come back to you with those responses where possible. But for now, I think we need to focus on the questions that are directly linked to the survey. So there's a question from Ruth Ishimwe. It seems that DCTs referenced in the survey were decentralized across multiple sites within the same country. Is there data on prevalence of multi-country DCTs in the sub-Saharan African region?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, but the set of questions this survey could answer is very much limited. So probably it could be answered by a more robust kind of study, the continent. And unfortunately, the simple answer is no, we don't have this information from the survey.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, David. And in fact, just to elaborate on that a little bit, the survey was open to people who are doing studies which are multi-country or single country. And so it's not necessarily that the responses were only single country. I think some of the responses were multi-country. We just don't have the data on which studies. People were encouraged to put the actual online registration number of the studies. And so I'm sure somebody could go and dig into that if needed, but it wasn't a direct question in the survey
yeah. It's true
answer.
that we have got these types of participants who have got experience in more than one country, but we can't talk of prevalence of such types of diseases because our data may not be it's even the sample size is 40. So with that 40 sample size, the kinds of things that we can say is very much limited.
Yeah. And then just as the last question for the live discussion, and I think any other questions will just come back to you offline. But from Gurdeep Bhattar, how do you improve digital literacy? What are some ideas? I don't think we'll be able to answer that piece of the question here, but the piece that I think, David, you will be able to answer was, were there any regulatory challenges encountered at IRB or ethics level? Did that come up in the survey? And the part of the question about how were those issues mitigated, I don't think we'll be able to answer here, but just to go to the ethical and regulatory challenges when it came to DCTs.
Yeah, so the regulatory compliance issues, as you can see, is number 4 in terms of frequency. So we do have this challenge. We cannot say in authoritative way that this is a solution, but somehow what has been mentioned by the participants is that you can train the regulatory authorities and ethics committees concerning DCT, and also provide them information regarding the advantage of this DCT element. So that is the solution suggested by the participants. As Christine mentioned, we cannot say this, this is a solid response. To be able to say as a solution, we need to do something more robust than this. Yeah, as I said, this is only a first step, and we need more work in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that leads us really nicely into the poll. David, would you like to manage the poll discussion? And I just want to, while you get that ready, thank all the participants for really interesting and active participation. I know that there were a few questions in the chat about sharing the names of all the participants. I think that would have to be up to you to glean from the recording. I don't think GDPR, certainly in Europe, would allow us to share everybody's names and email addresses more broadly. But thank you very much for your active discussion. And David, over to you to manage the poll.
Yeah, I've just casted the first poll, just assessing, the participants whether they are willing to be part of the community of practice, either through the CleanOps or the CTC, the clinical trial community, which is hosted in South Africa by Nuvotech. So let's see the number of people who are willing to participate in the community of practice, and then we'll go to the next part of the poll. Probably we need a minute or so for this.
Considering there are only 2 options, I'm hoping that a group of this caliber does not need more than a few seconds to answer that one.
Yeah. So probably you can tell me when to stop, Christine.
I think you can move on to the next question, David.
Okay. Okay, let me share and then stop sharing, and let me go to the next one. Okay, we're having. Okay, so the next one is about the next steps, and we've suggested several things here. So the question is, what do you think should be the immediate next steps concerning DCTs in the continent? So either continuing with the collection of more data in the survey that I just presented about, or engage in other types of studies, could be qualitative or other types of studies, or work towards development of guidelines and white papers, or you could have, any different opinion. And if that is the case, please indicate, if you have chosen the fourth option, you need to indicate specifically what we need to do as immediate next step.
Right. And then while people do that, Stella, I see your hand is up. And I don't think we're going to have time to take any more questions here, but if you are able to type your question into the chat, perhaps send an email directly to David and Yasu and me, we can facilitate getting the answer to your question. Excellent. All right. So while people post their answers, I just want to reiterate that, as David mentioned, he and CDT-Africa are looking to publish the results of the survey, but we will share the slides with all of you and the recording. It has been an absolute pleasure having all of you, and a huge thanks goes to David and Iyasu for presenting today, and for the GHCC partners who were part of developing the survey and ensuring that that survey was completed. And to all the participants in the survey, many of whom I think are on the call today, thank you for your time in completing the survey. And we're really looking forward to getting the feedback from this last poll to work out how to support the work in this further. I just want to remind everybody that none of these perspectives are by any means the perspectives of the organizations who facilitated the survey. It's a collation of data from all of you in the community, and we would love to continue to hear your perspectives and thoughts to make sure that DCT is successful across the region, and that any barriers and challenges that are identified can be mitigated as a community. So on that, I would like to give over to Iyasu and David for any closing remarks.
I think I don't have anything further, Christine. You have closed it nicely, so I would rather stop here. So probably I will end the poll. And Professor Yasu, if you have got any last words, you are welcome to go ahead.
Only I would like to say thank you to those who
Excellent.
have participated in this discussion.
Yeah,
Excellent.
probably I'm going to say something. Those of you who have indicated that you're going to participate in the committee of practice, we'll make sure that you're contacted to be, interacting in that committee of practice. Thank you. Back to you, Christine.
Excellent. Thank you very much. On that, we're going to close the meeting and end the recording. Thank you for your active participation, and we're looking forward to continuing the dialogue on topics like this with all of you in future. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.